I had a friend of mine who I respect very much and kept expressing all this interest in UFO phenomena, and I just kept writing the whole thing off as complete nonsense. I remember very vividly him bringing up with me the topic of UFOs, and I would just disregard it immediately without even listening to any of the evidence or any of the stories. I just, flushed it right down the toilet. And after about 2 years of poking and prodding at me, I finally took the time out and listened to what he had to say about this, and he showed me some information, a few articles that had been written on it in Popular Science and amongst other things. And I just eventually gave in and decided that I'd give him a try, and we went out to this remote area, Area 51, now quite infamous, secret military facility out in Nevada. And we had an experience where we saw a craft, which was probably military, but it was a flying saucer-shaped craft, and that sparked my interest. From that moment onwards, I realized that there is something to this. My entire family was laughing at me. Everyone was laughing at me the entire time, close friends. And I had to make the decision, well, just to completely, push them aside and push on with it, and I did. 5 years later, I finished the documentary and sold it to Discovery Channel, and it's been airing all over the world. It's been translated into 4 different languages, and had some additional interviews with Mercury astronaut Gordon Cooper.
Well, these objects kept coming over flying the same kind of formation that we fly in our fighters.
Where were you flying?
We were flying in Germany, and we were flying F-86s. And they would come over and do the same maneuvers that we make, except every once in a while one of them would go zip. And you just can't do that in a fighter, a conventional fighter.
Did you know where that footage went of the flying saucer that landed on the tarmac?
Went to Washington, that's all that I know.
Did you ever keep in touch with anybody about it or discuss it?
How would I keep in touch with anybody about it? There's no way within the military or within the government of keeping track of something that is classified, unless you're directly involved in it, and I was not. So I had no way of knowing what happened to it.
Was it included in part of the Project Blue Book investigation?
No, it was not. And that was one of the complaints I had about Project Blue Book, which in my opinion, Project Blue Book was totally a whitewash. There were a number of other things on Blue Book that I hadn't had the occasion to know about that were not included in Blue Book either.
In 1966, congressional hearings were held with Secretary of Defense Harold Brown and scientific advisor of Project Blue Book, Dr. J. Allen Hynek.
What is the Air Force hiding in this investigation?
We have not been hiding anything. The investigations have been made public. The explanations of those where there is a clear explanation have been made public. The hearing this morning was public for just that reason.
None of the evidence that I have examined would indicate any proof at all that we are being visited by extraterrestrials.
Well, the funny thing about it was when I first set out to get the interview with Edgar Mitchell, I remember I was in England and I was visiting a friend of mine who knew that I had a very distinct interest in UFOs. And I was upstairs, I'd just flown in from California, and I was jet lagged, and she screamed, was hollering down from downstairs, "Come down here quick, there's something on the television you need to see." Ran downstairs, and there was Edgar Mitchell on some sightings or Discovery Channel special talking about UFOs. And from that moment, I said, I got to talk to this guy. I got to get an interview with this guy. And I just saw it happen. I saw myself interviewing him from that moment. I know this sounds crazy, but I swear to you, I saw it happen. I got probably somewhere in the realm of 20 denials. First of all, he wouldn't even return my calls. Then I got, I've sent him letter upon letter upon letter. I think after the 10th letter, I think I got a letter of denial. Thank you very much, but I'm not interested. Then after about another year, I got another 3 or 4 letters of denial. And that went on for about 2 years. And then finally, he gave in and gave me an interview. But I always knew I was going to get that interview, and I can't explain it, I just knew it. I was never even fazed by his letters of denial. I just knew that I was going to get it.
I talked with people of stature, of military and government credentials and position, and heard their stories and their desire to tell their stories openly to the public. And that got my attention very, very rapidly. The first-hand experiences of these credible witnesses that now in advanced years are anxious to tell their story. We can't deny that. And the evidence points to the fact that Roswell was a real incident and that indeed an alien craft did crash and the material was recovered from that crash site.
Philip Corso was the aide to Senator Strong Thurman, wrote the foreword to his book. He was head of the Foreign Technology Division in the Pentagon during the Eisenhower administration in in the early 60s. Background check on this guy was solid. I didn't personally do it. Edgar Mitchell and some people that he knew had done an extensive background search on him, and he came up very, very good. And when he was talking about having this drawer in the Pentagon, and I was sitting down with him in a hotel room in New Mexico for the 50-year anniversary of the Roswell incident. Sitting down with him in this hotel room, and he was describing having this drawer in the Pentagon, this buried drawer, and it was filled with artifacts from that alien spacecraft that crashed. And he was describing to me what these things look like, and the detail that he described this with, and the fact they didn't know anything about it, what these things were. And he described fiber optics. He described super tenacity fibers. He described lasers, these little things, and he described it, and he was so matter-of-fact about the whole thing. And it really had a very profound impact on me to see this guy. And I said, what made you decide to come forward with this information? And he put his arms around his grandchildren. And he said, this is it right here. He said, my grandchildren have to know what really happened. They have to know our history.
I had the evidence that a crash did happen here. Stalin gave orders to get this information that came out of Roswell to some of his top scientists and agents. That order went out. And we knew that in the special intelligence that I was in the Pentagon, which was very closely held. KGB trying to penetrate that, but they never did. The message in my book that I like to see is that the younger generation look at this and see what we did and see the help we got from outer space, and these beings exist. Give us information to the young people of the world in this country. They want to hear it. They want it. Give it to them. Don't hide it and tell lies and make stories. They're not stupid. It's their information. It doesn't belong to the Army or the Department of Defense. It's theirs. If it's classified, take the classification off and give it to them.
One of the things that I've been fascinated by learning and looking into the UFO phenomena is that it's actually a very, very profound, in-depth phenomena that is entangled in a web of just about everything that's going on in our world today.
If I had 1 minute to speak to the world and say something about UFOs, I would simply try and give them a very brief snapshot of the work that I did for the government. I would say, look, forget science fiction, forget all the cranks and the cultists, and there are some, let's be clear on that. I'd say forget that. Get inside government, get inside the military, as I have done, and you'll see that there are files there and there is a body of evidence and knowledge there to suggest that there is far more to the UFO phenomenon than just stuff and nonsense. This is a real issue. There are defense and national security issues here that need to be gripped and need to be gripped now.
It's a quasi sort of government, quasi-military group, very sinister group, that are operating free of any oversight from Congress or the House of Representatives. These guys are operating in the shadows. They're not elected representatives. They don't come and they don't go. They stay there. And it's a very scary thought that these guys, the Joint Chiefs of Staff themselves and people in the Pentagon are shrugging their shoulders and saying they're out of the loop, which basically means the President's out of the loop, Congress is out of the loop, House of Representatives out of the loop. Who is in the loop? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. Who's controlling these secret military bases? Where is the funding coming from? And how are these guys operating free from any oversight whatsoever? What's happening to the constitutional process and all the rest of those things? Those are the questions we have to ask ourselves. Mm-hmm. And the more and more we look into this, I can state numerous examples of Congressman Stephen Schiff, who tried to get information on the Roswell incident. He came up short with everything. I mean, he's Congressman Stephen Schiff, and then he ended up dead. So, but there's numerous occasions. Carter himself, made in reference to when he said he'd become president, he would come out with this information to the general public about UFOs. He said, I've seen one myself. When he became president, a few years gone by, they were having a press conference. Somebody raised their hand, asked them a question. When you said you became president, you'd release information regarding UFOs. And he paused for a moment, and he said, in response, I don't have a high enough clearance. And everybody laughed. But I think he was serious. you know. Webster Hubbell's book that just came out, Friends in High Places, good friend of Bill Clinton. He writes in there the fact that Bill Clinton and him were looking into the UFO phenomenon and who killed JFK. They weren't happy with the response they were getting. So there's a lot of indication that would support that theory, that is what appears to be going on, is that this stuff is being controlled by people that really the people that are in the loop are not in the loop, they're out of the loop, including the President of the United States.